are trying this again, and we think we have sound. We just had to, you know how it is with computers. Sometimes you just gotta turn them on again. So we hope that this will be, take number 2 will be good. So we are going to begin our worship again with our invitation to worship. Please do, we thank you so much for your patience. Do follow along, do sing out loud with your hymns, and please continue to comment for us. Good is better, but take whatever we can get. But please be positive. Bruce, I invite you to share our call to worship.
God, we welcome you here, where we are, here where you are. God, we welcome you, ask you to open our eyes. God, we welcome you, show us how to be uncomfortable for your sake. God, we welcome you, ask for courage to be your hand, your voice in this world. God, we welcome you to see your neighbors as yourselves. Move among us, Father, Son, and Spirit. Now we'll do that. First thing this morning, what friend we have in Jesus. Join me as we read the opening prayer. God of love, give us a deep love for you, so that we can see the world you see it. Feel the compassion you feel. Be a people whose lives mediate your love to others. So open our eyes that we might see what the God Samaritan saw. Grant us the insight to see the need in others, the wisdom to know what to do, the will to do. So we pray for all those, many in various ways, stripped, beaten, left for dead. Pray for those who might cross the road to avoid, who have been viewed socially because of their race, their financial status, or their history. May the dignity that's theirs be restored to them. Pray for those who need rather not face up because it requires action of us. Those who suffer atrocities because of war, unjust trade rules, or present government. May the world receive a true picture of their suffering, the factors that cause justice may be done. Open our eyes that we might not trust gold from human beings. Give us a deep love for you. We might see your love at work in this world, and we might go and do likewise. We pray in the name of the one Jesus Christ our Lord, using the words that taught us. Disciples say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever.
I wonder, if every single night of your family you had this choice for dinner, you could have ice cream every night for dinner. How many of you would have ice cream every night for dinner? But what if your only choice was to have Brussels sprouts every night for dinner? How many of you would have Brussels sprouts every night for dinner? Not me either. But what if you could have a choice of sometimes ice cream, sometimes Brussels sprouts, and sometimes, some good healthy meat, some protein, some vegetables? What we really think we like is ice cream, but we know that is healthy. Tastes good. We really don't want Brussels sprouts all the time. What we really want is our third choice, to have a healthy meal with ice cream for dessert every single time. In our parable today that Jesus shares, there's three choices that are given. I want you to pay particular attention to which one you like the best and which one makes you feel just a little good. Let us join together in singing our next hymn, Help Us Accept Each Other.
scripture reading this morning is from Luke 10, verses 25 to 37. Just then the lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? He answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, all your strength, with all your mind, your neighbor as yourself. He said to him, you've given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, man is going down from Jericho, fell into the hands of robbers, stripped him, beat him, went away, leaving him half dead. Now the chance of priest was going down that road. He saw him pass by on the other side. So likewise, the Levite, he came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. But a Samaritan traveling came near him. When he saw him, he was moved with pity. Went to him, bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on him. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, took care of him. Next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, take care of him. When I come back, I will pay you whatever more you spend. Which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? He said, one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. This is the word of the Lord.
I invite you to watch this video as we open our message. I have a friend that I can go to for advice, and when asked, he will often answer the question, what do you want to hear? The advice you want to hear? The advice you need to hear? Or the advice you don't want to hear, but you should hear? Invariably out of these 3 categories, the first is what would make me feel comfortable. The second is the one that I thought I would say, but that I can probably ignore or gloss over. And the third comes closest to the best advice and is usually the most uncomfortable. Isn't that the worst? That friend or that family member with the best advice that you really don't want, and you want to say, darn it, couldn't you just give me the first one and have done with it? You want to say that, but deep down in your heart, you know that you went to that friend because you knew that they would give you the straight answer, the best answer for you. Darn it. One such question was, do you think I should go to seminary? What do you want to hear? The advice you want to hear? Probably not. It's a lot of work. The advice you need to hear? And you think of anything else that you would do with your life. Do that instead, because ministry is long. For the advice that you, don't want to hear, but you should hear. That is what God has called you to do. Do you have any other choice? Darn it! In our passage today, Jesus is being asked for his advice. And the question begins like this. Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Now I'm certain this man was asking Jesus this question more to trip him up than anything, but he was given an answer in the form of a question, like my friend. But Jesus altered this. He would ask people to come up with answers that were already like that friend of mine. Jesus said to the man, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" Remember, I told you that Jewish laws were very exacting and very complicated, and there were a lot, 613 to follow. Man gives the answer that we can read elsewhere in Mark's Gospel. When Jesus was asked of all the commandments, which is the most important, and in Mark's Gospel we hear Jesus say, the most important one is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind and all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. Now, it is unclear whether this passage that we heard this morning from Luke and the passage that I just read from Mark were from the same day or the same account. Scholars feel that it is most likely that the lawyer is asking this question today because he has heard Jesus preach before and he is waiting to find out, say the same things. He's waiting to trip him up. Jesus turns it back to him. And he answers the question to his credit. He answers. Jesus lets him answer his own question. Sort of like, what do you want to hear? What is the greatest commandment? And the man says, you shall love the Lord your God with your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. There it is. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The man that he was talking to, this simple, succinct answer wasn't cutting it for him. Jesus even verifies this to the man. He says, you've given the right answer. Do this and you will live. But this doesn't go far enough, this lawyer. I think he is still looking for some version of the 613 laws. It can't be that easy. So he doesn't let it go. Pushing for some clarification. We read, wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Spell it out for me, Jesus. Here we get choices, much like my friend used to me. What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear? Do you want to hear? Do you want to hear what you need to hear? Or the advice that you don't want to hear, you should hear? Jesus answers in the form of something he does so often. Setting it up for the man to answer his own questions. Tells this story that we have to know as the Good Samaritan. And in it we are introduced to three men face a challenging situation. They come across a Jewish man. Remember that. It's kind of important to the story. This man has been beaten and robbed and left for dead. The first man is a priest. We know that when the priest saw him, walked by, others said, this is a priest. The highest echelon of the Jewish temple, a man who knew the laws but was accustomed to not getting his hands dirty. Priest called himself man of God, but who would prefer to see a problem, maybe even point to the problem, say to himself or to others, it's not my problem. Someone else can deal with it. Saying to himself, brothers, I'm too busy. I'm too important to be influenced by this man's problem. second man, Levite, comes upon this Jewish man, Ditch. Levites were descendants of Jacob's son Levi, and they also worked and were selected to work in God's temple. They served mostly in a peripheral play music. Not that music is peripheral. Opening and closing the gates and standing guard. They knew the laws. And they were used to doing what was necessary in the temple so that the priests didn't have to dirty their hands to do it. And yet this man, seeing Jewish man, Jew like himself, but then chooses to walk aside. Maybe he says, I'm not sure what to do. Maybe I don't feel qualified. Perhaps he said to himself, maybe he say to others, I don't have the skill sets necessary to help this man. And then there's the third tribe, Samaritan. In Jesus' time, Samaritans were the less than. They were the outcasts in Jewish society. Dr. Amy Jill Levine, a Jewish scholar, explains that they were not simply outcasts. She said they were the despised enemies of the Jews. Yet, where listeners would have expected a Jew to be the hero of Jesus' story, instead they would have been shocked to hear that it is a Samaritan. A Samaritan? The hero? An outcast? The hero? Jesus say it isn't so. This Jewish audience would have been appalled because the racism against this man and others like him would have been an integral part of their society. Say it isn't so, Jesus. But it is precisely this outcast who had likely been the brunt of systemic societal racism, bigotry, who sees the Jewish man Ditch and recognizes that he can do something to help. More than that, he feels compelled to do something to help another, not someone like him, maybe not even someone he could identify with. Perhaps someone he would not have associated with. Perhaps someone that he would normally cross to the other side of the road to avoid. Yet, here is this Jewish man, weak, broken, and weak, and tragic, holding out a hand for help. It's a vision. I was thinking and looking this week for images of this, and I came across two pictures and a story I wanted to share with you. Here I can have the first picture. This picture was taken by a South African journalist named Kevin Parker. And yes, I know, it's uncomfortable. The child, clearly starving. Like the battered man in the Jewish parable, clearly begging for help from someone who is certainly in a position to help, much like our priest or Levite, and this person is walking like our priest. As I looked further at this man, Kevin Carter's work, I came across another of his pictures that caused a great deal of controversy. And yes, I know this one just as uncomfortable. Not the next one. It's the picture of a vulture waiting for this starving child to die. When this photograph capturing the suffering of the Sudanese famine was published in the New York Times in March of 1993, the reader reaction was intense and not all positive. Some people said that Kevin Carter was inhumane. He should have dropped his camera and went to help this child. controversy only grew when a few short months later, this photograph won Pulitzer Prize. Parker had taken this assignment in Sudan, where he shot this famous picture. He spent so much time going to villages full of starving people, but all the while he was surrounded by Sudanese army soldiers who were there to keep him from interfering. There was evidence and eyewitness accounts that even if he decided to help this child, the soldiers would have prevented it. It is likely he would have been detained, put in jail, or maybe shot. He was forced to leave the child. He was forced into emotional detachment. And this allowed Parker and other photojournalists to witness countless tragedies. Continue the job. Later it became clear that he was not detached at all. He had been deeply and fatally, absolutely affected by the horrors he had witnessed. By the end of July of 1994, just a few short months after winning this Pulitzer Prize, he was dead. Committing suicide at 33. Notes that he left behind cited this picture, and the knowledge that even though his life was in danger, that he had not to his child. Like the priest, like the Levite. Are we readers? Christians? Are we like this reporter, like the priest? Are we okay with seeing a problem and pointing to the problem, but not getting our hands dirty, either in a literal or figurative sense? Seeing in our society, in our country, systemic poverty and systemic racism and systemic bigotry, and yet saying to ourselves or to others, I'm too busy to be influenced by this. That needs my own. Or are we like the readers of the New York Times who saw this picture, like the Levite, seeing the problem but not feeling qualified to do anything, pointing it out and saying, I don't have the skill set, so I won't do anything. I'm sure that many of the readers of the article showing this little child fall into this category, but their outrage sparks third group people, rescuers, good Samaritans. People like me would be very happy to next time. Like seeing systemic poverty, seeing systemic racism and systemic bigotry, and saying to ourselves or to others, I can do something about this. I may not have a deep theological background or know everything there is to know about this problem. I may not have the skill sets necessary to solve this problem in its entirety, but like the Samaritan, I can do something about this. I will do something. That starts first acknowledging the issue of systemic poverty, systemic racism, and systemic bigotry, and then seeing what we can do. And these will fall into those three choices of advice we talked about at the beginning that are embodied in the three men parable. First thing we could do is what makes us feel the most comfortable. The second is the one that we can ignore or gloss over, like the Levite. Third is usually uncomfortable, Samaritan. These three options. questions? Or will you go to the store and buy groceries with me? Will you see systemic racism and keep quiet? Or will you speak to those who post xenophobic memes on Facebook? Or will you take a stand and protest against racism, pointing to the injustices faced by fierce persons of color? Will you look at systemic bigotry in all its forms and turn away? Or say that there's nothing that you can do about it? Or will you speak to others about changing their mindset, challenging society's status quo? First option is the easiest. Second, in most of these cases, causes us some unease, but we can turn away. We can walk away from it. We can walk on the other side and avoid it, yet too comfortable. The third choice in each of these scenarios is in your face. It's socially awkward, it's unnerving, and it's uncomfortable. Darn it. Jesus told this story to his followers precisely so that his listeners would feel uncomfortable. Jesus tells us this story to make us feel uncomfortable. He is that friend. Makes us uncomfortable. Darn it! That's what good friends do sometimes. Told this story to make them question their stereotypes, their assumptions, to try to get them to look at their ingrained prejudices. Does the same for us. Told them this story to make them at themselves and answer the question, what's my name? What do you want? Advice you want to hear? The advice you need to hear, or the advice that you don't want to hear, but you should hear. Asks us the same questions. When faced with the unsettling knowledge that we continue to live in a society, we continue to live in a country where there continues to be systemic poverty and systemic racism and systemic bigotry. We see it in the homeless and hungry on our streets. We see it in the continuing legacy of residential schools, never appointed than in the last few weeks. We see it in pictures yesterday of a Montreal arrest where a police officer had his knee, neck, Jesus asks us, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in his robbers? Which of these neighbors will order first? A reader at the right, or Samaritan? The only that we can give to Jesus is, as the man said, one who showed mercy. Jesus said to him, Jesus says to us, go to others. Today we are blessed to have on Father's Day a father and his son duet, It Is Well With My Soul, by Kevin and please enjoy.
When peace like a river attendeth my
you so much to Kevin. So wonderful to see and to hear you both. Let us take some time in prayer. Let's pray. God, we thank you this day for fathers, for father figures. Thank you for dads. Thank you for the dads who cared during hard times and cheered for us in the gifts. To the men who showed us what it means to work hard and show up consistently. To the father figures who offered us timely advice, practical support. To the men who continue to support, encourage, and inspire us. Thank you for showing us what it looks like to be God-dad. For saying, hold our family to our loved. God, thank you for providing us for being our Heavenly Father, turn to for the advice that we need to hear, that we should. Thank you that you sent your Son Jesus Christ for us to give us your advice. Today, we give thanks for Father's Day. Keep them safe, and those that are gone, keep them, hold them close to you until receive our offerings in a variety of ways to do the work that is necessary for this congregation. Indeed, as we look to our please tithe, send your offerings, and know that you accept this work. Let us sing together and praise God for all blessings. Lord, each gift that you bless us with, we are honored to give back to you and to give to others in your name. Bless the gifts and the givers. Bless all. Come before you, declare you to be your heavenly. As we finish with our last hymn today, thank you again for your patience with our technical issues. And if you're watching later on, we'll last one of this worship time together. Our last hymn is Will You Come and Follow? into God's world, knowing the grace of God, love of Jesus Christ, His Son, the peace of the Spirit is yours today.